Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, transforming the way people think and work so their organizations can thrive. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Ed Kless, and today's episode is cut from another podcast of which I am the co-host, The Soul of Enterprise, which is also sponsored by Sage. The Soul of Enterprise is dedicated to belief that business has a spiritual, though not necessarily religious, component. I hope you enjoy this excerpt. If you do, please visit www.thesoulofenterprise.com for more.
My motivation, the inspiration for it was I actually started blogging before I was doing anything online. I was blogging first in 2005. Then I started putting the videos on YouTube shortly after. And people came to know me from YouTube. YouTube was just more visible than blogs, at least for me. But I always had an idea that I have some things that I want to say that I know, like I mentioned earlier, is kind of what some people call contrarian or disagreeable, is just against the grain. I knew I had some things that I wanted to share that most people didn't think, just from the conversations I would have with people. So when I saw blogging, and it was just a way that, okay, anyone can get online and just express however they feel and publish it to the world, I said, perfect. That was exactly for me. So that's how I started it. And then once I started making the videos on YouTube, the players who were watching me, and these were just basketball videos at the time, the first 5 years, they started asking me about my background. And when I shared with them the same background that you just shared a few minutes ago, they started asking about my mental approach, because they're like, all right, that sounds kind of far-fetched. Like, how are you going to become a pro with that kind of background? You barely played in high school, played D3 college ball. Most people with that background do not play professional basketball. So they could see that I could play because they were watching me on video every day. So then they wanted to know, what was I thinking? What was my thought process? So that's when I started writing about that a little bit more. And then eventually, probably by around 2010, I started talking about the mental game side of things. And that's when people who weren't even athletes really started finding me, when I started talking about that mental game thing. So my inspiration was just sharing what I had within me that I thought might be interesting to other people. And when I started sharing it, people were responding to it. And because they responded, I kept doing it. So that's really how it went. It was really that simple.
Wow, that's phenomenal, because as I was going through all your content, you share the same philosophy that Ed and I have, which is we give away our knowledge. And The philosophy is, if you give it away, then you have to replenish it. So you're always at the contrarian edge or the cutting edge. You seem to share that philosophy.
Oh, yeah. I put out so much stuff. I put out more stuff for free than most people put out, period. And one thing that I tell people is, if someone's trying to compare me to anyone else who's talking about the mental game, that my free stuff is better than their paid stuff. So that's the angle that I have, is that stuff I put out for free is better than anything that anyone else is putting out. And then, as you said, if you put all that stuff out, you're talking putting stuff out every day. Now the challenge is you have to do it again. Now you have to keep putting stuff out. You got to keep coming up with new ideas. And one thing it does help you do is master your voice. So after 15, 16 years of doing this, I know my voice, I know my approach, I know my angle, and the people who come across me, even if they just heard of me today, they can dive deep into that, that well, into that vault, and they can get a pretty good feel for who I am and what I'm about in 24 hours.
Well, you're a great accomplished speaker. I give you credit, because you stand and you when you present, you command the audience, and I'm really interested in what you have to say. In 2009, you formed the Work on Your Game, Inc. You've got over 400 products. Again, you've written 27 books. Tell us about that journey. And I know we've only got a couple minutes, so it's a little bit unfair, but tell us about the journey of starting this enterprise.
Sure. Well, that journey actually, the good luck of starting that journey actually came from the seed of, I guess, what we'll call bad luck. Because once I started that pro basketball career, it wasn't just a straight, up and to the right path. There were times when, Ron, I didn't have a contract to play basketball. I found myself just an unemployed free agent athlete. And a lot of people in the sports fans don't realize that, you see the players who are playing on the teams like the Knicks and the Nets and the Mets, but there are a whole bunch of other players who want to be playing on the team, but they can't get signed because everybody cannot be on the team at the same time. Unlike a lot of other professions, like let's say podcasting or writing a book, anybody, as many people as want to do it can do it. But in sports, it's not like that. So I found myself unemployed, and I already had a little bit of an audience online, but again, it wasn't a thing yet. And I just asked myself, well, if this keeps going, where am I going to end up? I didn't like where my future projected with this up and down. So I asked myself the question, how can I find the triangle or the Venn diagram, I guess, between three things? Where I have the talent, which is basketball, where I have some natural inclination and skill, which is computers / the internet, and where I can make money. How can I do all three together? So that's when I really started focusing on let me put these videos out every day consistently. Let me start writing a little bit more about my experiences, about my mentality, and let's see what this internet thing becomes, because this is before personal branding, before social media was a phrase. All of these things were not even happening at that time. So when I started focusing on that, then that happened at the same time. So the good luck came from bad luck.
Review and subscribe by searching your podcast player of choice for Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.